Get ready, everyone, and you just might survive. Ruben and Jason are here with their X-Men deep dive. Going through all the X-books is their mission, so get ready for the Learned Edition. Things are getting weird in here. Ruben hopes another sword book gets announced this year. It's the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed not to blow, except your mind. It's the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed not to blow, except your mind.
Welcome, all you weirdos, married men who just can't seem to understand their wives, and everyone who watched Dazzler get kidnapped by Sentinels and thought, yeah, I'm okay with that. It is time to receive your 156th Weird Dose of X, the mutant member of your Weird Science podcast family. I am your ever vigilant host, Jason, broadcasting as always from the Wrong Turn studio, perched high atop stately Weird Science Tower. And with me is the man who sold Severith the giant skull hood ornament for the front of his Hell truck. It's my pal Ruben. Hey Ruben, how the heck are you?
Yeah. I was like, you're going to humanize ONE? That's very humanized.
Help you today.
My stupid phone's speaking up again. What was that again, Ruben?
Oh, God. I was just saying ONE is extremely humanized.
I mean, no one is totally perfect, but no one's totally evil either, right? There's good and bad points to everybody. That's all I'm saying. So yeah, we do have the Vigil to talk about today. We have X-Men number 19, all about our good buddy Doug to talk about today. We have Hellverine to talk about today. That's always a good week. And we have an Infinity to talk about today. So that'll be fun. First, we do have a little bit of news. Last week, we told you there'd be a line-wide X-Men crossover coming this October. And as usually happens, right after we recorded, Marvel announced more about that event. A little more. It's going to be called Age of Revelation, which, Ruben, makes it sound like you may be more correct than I gave you credit for, because you thought this was going to be all about Dougpocalypse doing his Dougpocalypse thing. So Are you feeling a little bit validated by that name?
I am, yeah, but I actually think now we're going to end up I think it's 50-50. Like, we're going to have Age of Revelation, and then I have a feeling there'll be like this secondary story about the people from the original Age of Apocalypse either continuing their story or trying to get back there. I'm not exactly sure how it's going to play out, but I kind of feel like those are going to be distinct but related miniseries that are going to be happening around the same time.
Well, we'll certainly find out in a couple of months. The only other information we have now besides the title is one single teaser image drawn by Humberto Ramos. It shows several of the X-Men, notably Colossus, all strapped to those X-shaped crosses that date back to 1989's Uncanny number 251. Marvel promises more information, quote, next week, which probably means right after we record this podcast, and will probably coincide with October's solicits for the X-line being made public. So we will learn more about that soon, and listeners, you may know more about that when you listen than we know when we're recording, because that's how time works. In other news, one other news item, very small, not small, but very, very personal, I would say. Since our last recording, Ruben, it was our editor James's birthday. Did you know that?
I did. I saw everyone saying happy birthday, so happy birthday, Jim.
That's right. He's now 75 years young. Congratulations. So in lieu of a gift, I'm going to plug the Patreon. I think that'll be a good thing to do. Folks, there's no other source out there for this much audio comic content. It just doesn't exist. Jim records 25 hours of content every 24 hours, it seems. Marvel, DC, indie, old stuff, new stuff. I laughed listening to him talk about some old Superboy comics this past week. Really good stuff. So if you want even more podcasts and to show your support, head over to patreon.com/weirdscience. You know you should, you know you want to. Check it out. Okay, Jim, happy birthday. Given that, let's now move on to our actual content, starting with the Infinity comic, which is Astonishing X-Men Infinity Comic number 28, The Cuckoo's Song, Part 3. Written by Alex Packnadel, art by Philip Sevi, colors by Michael Bartolo, and letters by Clayton Coles. So this story took a bit of a week off for a Hellfire Vigil preview last week, but now we're back on the Scottish island of Mersey. Husk and Skin are here to look for a mutant girl named Ava, and in this issue, things start to get a little more complicated, mostly in a good way. We don't need to do the page by page, but the upshot here is that the Islanders aren't the typical human supremacist mutant haters. They're just kind of mad that their supply of magic Krakoan meds got cut off, which is very reasonable, and I'm glad to see this actually being addressed somewhere in an X comic, because that should be a huge shock to the world that all their miracle drugs just go away. So these Islanders are using a creature who I think eats mutants and transfers their energy into some sort of healing situation. They call this creature the Angel, and when we see it, it's clearly a Venom-style symbiote from Clintar.
Yep.
Hinted at in part 2, now we see it very much full on. Are we supposed to recognize that symbiote as a particular symbiote, do you think? I'm not really so big. I know Venom, I know Carnage, and I know there's like Sleeper. I don't really know the others. Do you think it's a particular, or do you think this is a new one?
My guess is this is a new one. I wish they had drawn it a little bit differently, though. It looks exactly like classic Venom, except it's got some like bone spurs coming out of its knees and shoulders. I was like, it's not enough to really distinguish it.
It's a nice idea, though. I always like to see the X-Men situated within the larger Marvel universe and remembering that all these other powers and characters and worlds exist. So that's kind of good to see.
Yeah. I like the idea. It was a big surprise. I just kind of wish it was like purple or something. Something to make it a little more distinct. Like I still would have gotten that it's a Venom, but yeah, this works. And those symbiotes, they heal people, right? So I guess, if you don't have the Krakoan meds, you're letting a symbiote infuse you. What I was curious about is, does that mean that like all of these people have it, or does it just kind of jump between bodies?
It seemed like they were taking turns. It almost to me like that one person has to be like the almost like the nurse, or the person being like the agent. I'm not making Agent Venom, but like one person has to bear the symbiote and another person gets the healing from it. I don't think we're supposed to quite understand it yet, because I think it'd be the same person. What's his name? The guy with the gun kind of volunteered towards the end. I'll do this, but then they're going to use the healing to help out the doctor's daughter.
Yeah,
it seemed to be that way. Well, I'm sure we'll find out more next chapter. Yeah, Fraser. So meanwhile, Husk has disguised herself as the Islander Helen, daughter of Dr. What's-His-Name, who runs the place, and Husk finds Ava. Yeah, Barboose, something like that.
Yeah, Barboose, yeah.
So Husk finds Ava, who is the mutant girl they're looking for, but Ava only sees Helen and takes like a rifle shot at Husk. Now, you'd think that Ava, if she's a friend of Husk's, would kind of know she can look like other people. But I guess Ava is in, she's scared, she's in a rough situation, not thinking. I guess that works.
I thought it was rational.
Yeah, I'm fine with it. She misses the shot, thankfully, but it looks like Husk gets hit with like a bit of shrapnel or a ricochet off of a stone wall, something like that.
Yeah.
So Ava gets away. But Helen's dad, Dr. Barboose, finds Husk, thinks he's found his daughter, and I think he wants to find Ava and then feed Ava to the symbiote to get energy to heal his wounded daughter, who's actually one of the mutants. Is that what we're supposed to take from the end here?
I just assume whoever's the host would be getting the energy from symbiote. So I think he recognizes that she just has a very minor flesh wound.
Okay.
But regardless, the rest of the point is true, right?
He doesn't realize that this is Husk.
Yeah. And then you see that a conversation where he's like, you can't keep avoiding this forever, my girl. So I think she's never been the host of the symbiote.
Right. So, yeah, that's kind of a neat situation. And I guess Husk using her powers to disguise herself as another person, I think that's new to this series now that I think about it, right? She's always turned into like a rock form or some other, more combat modified form. But I think actually being like a clay face is new here. So maybe it makes more sense that Ava wouldn't know that she can do that.
Yeah. She's been doing a lot in this series, though. She was the podcaster, and now I guess she's Ava.
Yep, she was the pod. Yeah, she's been a few different people. So yeah, another thing we find out in this chapter is that Skin has some romantic intentions towards Husk, and that's picked up on by the doctor's mom, who clearly is receiving some benefit from this whole symbiote eating mutant situation because she used to get the magic Krakoan meds to fix her dementia, possibly Alzheimer's. And, it's going to be interesting because to cut off this evil scheme is going to be making people sick again. So there's going to be some complications here that I think from a moral standpoint, remind us that the end of Krakoa is having real repercussions for people, not just mutants.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is a pretty good chapter, pretty action-packed. I like that the Islanders have a motivation beyond just being creepy mutant haters.
Yeah.
And reminding us that there are consequences to Krakoa. Very, very good stuff. So definitely be keeping up on this if you have the Marvel Unlimited subscription. Okay, moving on to what is the big book of the week, at least in terms of page count and price. This is X-Men Hellfire Vigil #1. It is written by everybody, and it's drawn by everybody else. I'll give you individual credits for individual selections, but basically every current X-Office creative team is involved, including a few creative teams whose books have already ended, though there's no Mark Russell segment here. And as far as I could tell, none of the X-Factor characters appear at all. Did you happen to notice like a Granny Smite or a McCloud hanging out in the background anywhere?
No, that's kind of funny.
It's the only book that is not represented at all.
Yeah. I was surprised at how much Dazzler World Tour there was in here, but
indeed, for sure. Now the colors for the whole book are by Fer Cifuentes Sujo, and all the letters are by Travis Lanham. But this really is an anthology comic, right? Yeah, all the stories take place kind of at the same event, although there's multiple locations for the same event. They're all really separate stories. They don't interact with each other, even when you'd really think they should. For instance, the Dazzler segment has no repercussions anywhere, and it really, really should. The one relatively big event, which, spoiler, is 3K announcing themselves to the world, only happens at the very end, and I don't even really believe that's going to have that much in terms of repercussions outside of Jed McKay's own X-Men title. Do you think that the Uncannies are going to care about 3K?
That's kind of funny. Yeah, you'd think they would.
You'd think they would. Maybe they'll throw in like one item of dialogue somewhere just to make the universe feel a little connected, but
yeah,
it doesn't feel that big. In fact, Marvel seems to be caught between two poles, right? They clearly want to move on from Krakoa. They want the books to be their own separate things so that writers can tell their own stories. But they also know that there's a core chunk of readers who really loved Krakoa and are expecting all the books to be deeply intertwined. And it feels like they can't make a real decision which way they want to go. They're kind of trying to do both, but we'll see. So this book has 11 separate segments, so we better get onto these pretty quick. We'll be here all damn day. Segment #1 is a Ms. Marvel story featuring NYX, and it's 5 pages long. Written by Jackson Lansing and Colin Kelly, art by Javier Garron. And Ruben, I don't know what noise you made when you opened this book and saw that the very first featured character was Ms. Marvel, but you can probably imagine the sound that I made.
Yeah.
Now, thankfully, it's not like she is the main character through the whole book, which is what I was concerned about. But her segment does come first, and it actually works okay because we follow her coming in from Jersey City to Manhattan on, I don't know if that's a train or a bus, on public transportation. So it does, it brings us into the story. It works okay. And because this is a Lansing and Kelly Ms. Marvel comic, as soon as she gets there, somebody has to tell Kamala how great she is. In this issue, that honor falls to Prodigy. Kamala doesn't know all that many of the mutants here, so first Prodigy accompanies her through the party, and then she goes off with her old friend Miles Morales.
Yeah.
And that's all that kind of happens in this segment, right? It does bring us in. We do get some explanation of the event, like Anole tells us that all these calla lily pins that we first saw in last week's Astonishing X-Men, those are like your ticket. Prodigy made them using, quote, forge expertise, and Prodigy can borrow knowledge, so that works. And then Sync teleported them to everyone with an X gene, which he surely can't mean literally everyone with an X gene, right? There's some pretty awful people you don't want coming to your party.
Yeah. I was a little surprised by the non-mutants that were there. Like in one scene, we saw Captain Britain, the original Captain Britain. And then obviously Miles Morales was like, how do they decide which non-mutants get an invite to this event?
Well, there always have been some non-mutants at the galas. And I mean, these were people who have like teamed up with them recently. So like Captain America's there. That makes sense. It looks like Mayor Cage and Jessica
Yeah, and
Jones
I
are
get that because
there.
it's New York, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. I just didn't understand why I'd get Miles to show up, but why not?
Yeah, why not? I think it's mostly because he's friends with Kamala, and they wanted him there to kind of make that connection. My guess.
Where's that friendship from?
Oh, one of the teen teams. I forget what the name
Got
of it. It was the same team that had the teenage Cyclops on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, they've had some real connection.
The other thing I thought that was pretty cool about that spread page where you see everyone, is I'm noticing it now, the like wall of protesters, all the like anti-mutant protesters there. I was like, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that felt kind of cliche to me. It's the same, mutants out, get this vigil out, no muties. It's your basic hated and feared kind of situation. But yeah, I did like seeing all these characters.
How would people know about this? Like, did they announce this publicly that they were going to have this?
It's in Central Park. You got to reserve sections. I don't know how you rent out a part of Central Park, but it must have been.
Permit. They got a permit for the vigil.
Right. They pulled the permit somewhere.
Okay.
It became public.
Got it.
That kind of politics stuff. So another thing going on is that Sobonar's power is being used to create Krakoan-style gates only for a single day. And to get through those gates, you have to either, one of two things. You either have to have one of these calla lily pins, or you have to be wearing the skin of your deceased mutant lover. One or the other. We know, you can do that other way.
Yeah, of course. Yep.
And Anole says that these gates were established in various places where mutants congregate, basically anywhere a book is being set, Chicago, Alaska, Louisiana. He says there's even one in Araco. Yeah. But he says, we didn't hear back from anyone on Araco.
Yeah, well, they're dead. I told you they were killed by that. Yeah,
they're all dead.
The Inhuman that was up there.
Oh, bummer. Although Sobonar is here, so I guess Sobonar has moved to Earth. We've seen Sobonar in NYX, so
yeah,
there you go.
I think he relocated before they got wiped out.
Some other people I noticed in this crowd shot while we're here. We see Akihiro Hellverine there off on the left. That's kind of interesting. He's talking to somebody holding a shepherd's crook. I don't know who that is. We see Cable. We see Eye-Boy. We see Emma and 3 of the 4 cuckoos. Emma's talking to a man in like these royal garments facing away from us. And I think that must be that weirdo Jamie Braddock, another one of the Braddocks, who's he was in charge of an area of Otherworld there. Otherworld?
Yeah.
Is that the right name?
Yep.
Yeah, one of those weird realms connected to that Exit 10 business. Also, like you say, Brother Brian Braddock is off on the right. He's not a mutant. He's the one wearing what looks like a professional wrestling mask. We got Chamber, we got Bishop, and of course, any mutant crowd scene, I believe it's a law, you have to draw dupe. So yes, of course. I mean, if you were a Marvel artist, wouldn't you draw dupe at any given excuse?
Yes.
Of course. One more bit from this segment is we're told that Kamala has told her parents that she's a mutant.
Yep.
I don't think we've seen that happen on panel, have we? I thought that was still an up-in-the-air deal.
No.
Do you think that happens?
Maybe it's through the giant size.
Yeah, maybe that happens at the end of that event.
Yeah.
And this vigil must take place after that?
That's my assumption, yeah.
Could be. Maybe we spoil the end of giant size there. Okay, that's segment 1, Kamala Khan. Anything else to talk about there?
No. I mean, I did like I like the art in this. I guess I'd say that. It's really fun, and the big splash page is fun to look at.
Oh yeah, always love these crowd scenes. It's fun. It does look good. No complaints about that. Okay, segment number.
Sorry. One last thing.
Please.
At one point in the scene where we have Prodigy welcoming Kamala to the event, there's a few more spots of like characters, and we see Destiny and Mystique walk through the portal. They don't really do anything, but
that's true.
We last saw them. Mystique was depowered, so she's looking pretty good in this picture.
Yeah, that's pretty fascinating. Last time she wasn't just depowered; she was like a withered.
Yeah.
I don't want to use the word husk because that's another character, but she was in rough shape.
Yeah.
So having her drawn like that is something cool. I don't know if that's on purpose or if somebody didn't notice, but that is a good call. Thank you.
Yeah, and we get Longshot, which is one of my favorite characters.
Longshot. He's the one with the star on his eye in front of him?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay, now on to segment number 2, which is an X-Men segment and is 3 pages long. It's written by Jed MacKay, art by Netho Diaz and Sean Parsons. Jed MacKay is the only writer who gets 3 separate segments in this book, so they're all going to kind of link together. So what is going on here is that Cyclops feels a lot like Banshee did before Banshee got yelled at by Leprechaun, right?
Yeah.
Cyclops does not want to attend the vigil. He's kind of over it. He decides, I'm just going to stay here at the factory in Alaska on monitor duty.
Yes.
Psylocke tries to nag him into going, but since she's not a leprechaun, it doesn't work. That is the rule.
I thought Scott's perspective in this whole scene was extremely relatable.
Oh, 1,000%.
I was like, yeah, why are you going off partying when you've got like all this shit going on, right? This would be like right after the big fight with, I forget what her name is, but the giant creature, right? And
yeah, the whole kaiju versus twinsy kaiju, yeah.
Yeah, and your base had just been invaded by Wire, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Like, you got security issues here, right? So I'm with Team Scott, which I usually am.
Makes perfect sense to me. Ben Liu is also going to stay behind. He's the mutant who created those projections or mental projections of UFOs. And if you look in the background of the first page, Ben Liu is eating a hot dog. It's not a corn dog. He's not corn dogging it, but he is eating a hot dog. And that feels like maybe a joke, or maybe it's only a joke in my head, but it works for me.
Yeah.
So the two of them stay behind. Everybody else heads off to the party. We'll see more from these folks in a little bit. Okay, that's segment number 2. On to segment number 3, which is a Phoenix bit, and that goes on for 5 pages. It is written by Stephanie Phillips, art by Roy Mercado, and this story has absolutely nothing to do with the Vigil. You could maybe say thematically in a very distant sense, because we're way out in space with Jean and that spacecraft that I think Scott gave her. Narration boxes vaguely talk about her sister Sarah, but not in a way that gives away anything about how that story plays out. And in the next few pages, Jean thinks she sees a ghost in the mirror. Then the ship starts moving on its own through hyperspace. And then it's like crystals, and these crystals have like the ghosts of mutants from Earth hundreds of years ago who fled into space and died in space.
Yes.
So, Ruben, if these are dead mutants, do you think they would have been eligible for resurrection through the what do you call, the waiting room? Shouldn't some of these folks have come back?
Yeah, they chose not to.
I guess they never got to the top of the list. Things got busy.
I was busy wagging my finger at Jean holding hands with the ghost mutant.
Oh, you think they're getting a little too touchy-feely?
Yes, as usual.
Jealous boyfriend, yes.
Yeah, Jean has a very loose relationship. I mean, I understand they have an open relationship, but it's, my wife could not go hold the hand of a ghost boyfriend and go walking around. She should have been like,
that's
lead
in the
way.
prenup. No ghost boyfriends.
Yeah, lead the way. You don't need to hold hands as you're walking through the stars.
So what a weird segment.
Yeah.
We're never going to hear about these characters again. It reminds me that other Phoenix segment where she helped the dragon die less painfully somehow. It's just this whole bit could have been left out. I don't know.
You think this is a nothing burger? I think this is like the next arc. I think we're going to see a lot more of these characters.
I will bet you $20 American that we do not see these characters again.
Okay.
That's enough for what? Like 1.5 coffees where you live?
Oh, God.
Okay.
Segue. Yeah. So I went to the coffee shop downstairs and I just got a 12-ounce coffee. What do you think that would cost in Seattle?
Just like black coffee or just drip coffee?
It's like a latte. No, it's like a latte.
A latte. Okay. $8?
Yeah, nailed it. That's outrageous, right? When I looked at that, I was like, why am I spending $8 on this? Like, I could have just gone upstairs and flooded the drip coffee machine again like I did last time. We're way off topic here, but I was browsing the beginning of the Amazon Prime sales today. Yeah. And they have a segment called College Essentials, which they must be advertising to me because they know I have college kids in my family. Yeah. And one of them is like a $600 espresso machine. Oh my God, who can afford that?
For what we're paying for college, we are not putting an espresso machine. Well, maybe my kid could make some money that way. I mean, undercut Starbucks, sell them for like $6 a pop.
Yeah, there's always a person that does that, right? When I was in the dorms, there was somebody that somehow got like a pizza scam going. Like they're basically just buying
Wow.
I don't know. They bought like 10 pizzas a night. Like every Friday, they buy 10 pizzas and they'd sell it by the slice for like $1 or $2.
Yeah, where I went to college, I think we just had a pot dealer, but that's a different world, allegedly. Okay, we should probably get back to the comic here. Went to segment 4, which is 3 more pages from the X-Men creative team of McKay, etc. And now we're at the Chicago satellite location of the event. I guess it's like New Year's Rockin' Eve, where they have these parties happening in multiple time zones, all kind of linked.
Yeah. Except they're doing it backwards, right? Like when Chicago is like earlier, right?
Yeah, well, I guess it's not literally about like midnight New Year's Eve here, so.
Yeah. Well, normally you start in New York, right? And then you like go to Chicago and then you go to LA.
Right.
That's the way you throw a party at like all of the events before the,
Yeah, so this is before the main event. It's a Dazzler concert, of course it is.
Yes.
And we know here, we learn that Glob is a huge Dazzler fan. We learn that Quentin, not so much of a Dazzler fan. He calls her an industry plant. It's kind of funny.
Well, you're going to learn that he secretly is a giant Dazzler fan and he's just trying to be too cool for school. That's what's going to happen.
Boy, I hope not. I would lose some respect for Quentin if he turns out to have like a Dazzler t-shirt on under his shirt that isn't what I'm going to know about. So Temper, she exits stage left to go meet a date. We'll see who that is later. Won't be any surprise to people who have been reading these crossover events. And then Beast and Jennifer Starkey have a little bit of a romantic moment where at least they kind of say nice things about each other. Do they hold hands too at some point? Or they just kind of gaze into each other's eyes? They do hold hands.
Yeah. I mean, by the end of this, they definitely are together.
There's a lot of writers
surprise.
Seem to be using this event to advance romantic subplots.
Yeah.
Which makes me think that no one really had any great reason to do this. Or like, we'll hook our characters up. Why not? We can do that anywhere. Might as well do that here.
Sure.
This was an okay segment. I thought the characterization stuff was good. I did not read most of the Dazzler lyric bubbles.
No,
you can't make me. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. I recognized at some point she sang the Out and Proud song.
Yeah,
which I think was from the first issue.
This one's about Beauty and the Beast.
I think that was
Dazzler,
in the book too.
Yeah, I think Dazzler and Beast were an item at some point in the past. I don't know. So yeah, I think it's the idea. It's like a Taylor Swift thing where all her songs are about her exes.
Yeah,
I think this is her song about breaking up with Beast.
Yeah, I bet if you grabbed the book, the 4-issue series, you'd probably see these songs repeated
in the one shot. Yeah, these are the same songs for the most part.
The one shot.
I mean,
the 4-issue one shot. Yes,
right. It does make sense that a singer wouldn't write all brand new songs for this event, so of course the lyrics are going to be repeated. That's fine.
Yeah.
Plunging onward into segment 5. Time for X-Force. Oh, X-Force. Haven't seen this in a while. This is 5 pages, written by Jeffrey with a G Thorne, art by Marcus with an M Toe. And this is another segment that takes mostly apart from the event, where in Colossus's hometown in Siberia, most of this is a discussion between Colossus and John Wraith, that teleporting preacher guy from X-Force.
Yeah.
I did like that John Wraith just has no interest in the Vigil. He's not much of a joiner. He doesn't really see mutant as an important part of his identity. I kind of like that not everybody is, oh, hooray for mutants, mutant pride, all that stuff. Yeah. I thought it's good to have somebody just going, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I thought he was a cool character. I knew nothing about him before, besides the one time he showed up, teleported a couple people around. Mm-hmm, but he's definitely a more interesting character based on this scene. And I also appreciated that in here they talk about the Colossus armor and like what was the point of it. I'm probably stealing your thunder here, but when they talk about the helmet,
a little bit, they talk about the helmet blocking like
mind control,
which he was just mind controlled by Chronicler in the surface of his crazy brother. So. Yeah.
I do think it's
why he called himself Tank and pretended to be a different person.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is you would have thought like, yeah, I get the need for a mind control helmet, but like, why would you take a different alias as well?
And you could say, well, he just needed to have a total break from who he used to be, right? He in Krakoa, he was mind controlling, like murdering his girlfriend and burying her and turning on his friends. We talk about everybody having a rough time, and it seems like every character say, oh, he had a particularly rough time, like Banshee, Beast, in one sense, Colossus. So yeah, he's you can see why he would. I would like it to be stated a little more explicitly. And yeah, Jeff Thorne just never got to that issue of X-Force.
Yeah.
So we're going to have to kind of infer things like that.
I also thought it was interesting that he kept the gloves that make tools. I was like, is that going to be a part of Colossus going forward?
Yeah, we don't even really know where Colossus is going to pop up next. Maybe he'll take a little break and go off. What does he say he's going off? Yeah, so let me move forward because we'll get to that. He's kind of tired. He joined the X-Men because Charles Xavier said, oh, it's your duty to join the X-Men. This is back in the original Giant size. He went to Krakoa because he thought it was his duty. And every time he follows his duty, he gets into all sorts of trouble, including being mind controlled, being forced into being a murderer. After this conversation with John Wraith, Colossus and Magic do go to the Vigil together. He doesn't seem crazy about going, but he's not saying I'm not going to go like Cyclops and Banshee were saying. He just really isn't so much up to it, but he'll go along. Magic takes him through Limbo, where she can give him a costume change. And this segment ends with Colossus telling his sister that after the party, his only plan is to, quote, take a long, long walk. Now, maybe that'll be part of one of the books. Maybe this is just Jeff Thorne saying, hey, Colossus is not going to be around for a while. Just assume he's out there doing like a Forrest Gump, walking across the continent. But yeah, I think it's okay to give Colossus a little bit of a break. I like him as a character. I'm not saying I want him to go away, but it makes sense for him to go and kind of get his head straight. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it's fine if he goes away for a while. If they're going to do if he's not going to go away, he's going to show up somewhere and they show him walking, I would just hope that he's going to not walk through the United States because we've seen that like a bajillion times. If they're going to do like a
Captain America thing, yeah.
Yeah, if we're going to do like a country tour, like at least do it in Russia, right? Which I don't know nearly as much about. Somewhere where it's sort of like more interesting.
Walking across Siberia would take a very, very long time. Okay, so moving on to the sixth segment, which is Uncanny, written by Gail Simone, art by Luciano Vecchio. And the Uncannies and the Alaskan X-Men kind of run into each other in Chicago. They're there for the Dazzler concert. Cyclops isn't here, so everybody gets along. It's not really Cyclops' fault, but he really sets off Rogue. So if he's not in the crowd, everybody is more or less pals. Dazzler's still singing, so Rogue and Gambit go off to dance. Jitter and Calico go off to dance. And I kind of like this next bit. Psylocke and Death Dream have a little dance lesson. That was kind of charming, right? Psylocke almost being not a mother figure, except like a big sister. We know they actually had a meeting in Psylocke's solo book, so it makes sense for they have to have a little bit of a connection. That was kind of neat. Did you like they're not going to be a couple, I'm sure.
No. She's got what's his face?
Right, Gray
Crow. Yeah,
Gray Crow. I was just saying Gray Skull, but that's
kind of strange.
Book.
Where is Gray Crow?
He's probably off robbing a bank somewhere. All the mutants are busy, right? All the Captain America's here at the party.
I guess
all the banks are unguarded.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
That's my headcanon. That makes sense. The main story here is that Temper and Ransom, right? Temper from X-Men, Ransom from Uncanny. They have a little bit of a date, and they had a little bit of a moment in one of the earlier crossovers, so that makes sense. And he is super smooth here, right? He brings a corsage. He says, I don't know if maybe I'll try this line sometime. I don't know if I could pull it off. He says, you look beautiful like a horizon. What does that even mean? I don't know. But it doesn't matter.
He's got a Portuguese accent too, right? So he's probably super smooth.
He's Portuguese accent, handsome as hell. Doesn't matter what he says.
Comes from like extreme wealth.
I'm sure that doesn't hurt. Yeah. So yeah, later in the night, they smooch. They are clearly officially an item.
Yeah.
Once again,
even
these writers
Catholic. They got similar religion. They got it all going together.
Their families are going to be okay with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, writers seem to not know what to do with this vigil, so we'll advance the romantic subplots. Next segment 7. This is the Exceptional X-Men segment, written by Eve L. Ewing, art by Federica Manchin, still in Chicago, still at the Dazzler concert. The Exceptional kids are browsing, and I did like this bit, knockoff Dazzler merch. You know that if there's going to be an event like this, all the knockoff vendors are going to be there pushing their stuff. What did they say that one of the T-shirts says? Duzzler?
Duzzler, yeah. I love that one.
That'd be funny. I like that. Okay, good stuff. Bronze, she's really more about the opening act. We don't hear about the opening act anywhere but this segment, although they're supposed to be connected.
Yeah.
We're told the opening act was a band named Kitsune, which is Japanese for fox. And Bronze says that the members of this band have, like, fox ears on the foxtail. Ruben, do you think those are, like, costumes like Josie and the Pussycats? Or because this is a mutant concert, do they actually have fox ears and foxtails?
Yeah, they probably actually have it.
Probably the latter.
The one thing I thought was kind of sad about this scene in general is you see a lot of, Uncanny and regular X-Men interacting in the sections that aren't written by, the main writer. But we only see this team, the exceptional team, like in the exceptional section, like interacting with other people. So it kind of seems like nobody really wants to play with these characters except Eve Ewing.
Well, they don't. I guess you could say that these people really haven't met.
Yeah, the same way there was no crossover. Yeah, I guess that's true.
It would be nice if there was, we could get the feeling there was more discussion among the writers to make this feel like it flowed more like a story.
Yeah.
Because for the most part, like I said, it's an anthology. These are all things that happen at these same events, but they don't really cross over into each other.
At least get Emma or Kitty to introduce them to, like, the Outliers.
Just have one moment of them bringing them into the main cast would be fun. Something else that happens here is that Axo is worried that given the size of the crowd, they won't be able to see the show very well. So we see Melee do her invisible intangibility thing, get them all up to the front. It's nice to see that her growth in confidence in using her power is proceeding, so that's good. We have a hooray for mutant identity moment, and then Axo leaves to have his date for the evening. So yeah, more romantic encounters. This one was at least foreshadowed in 2 books, in Exceptional and in NYX, and it's the meeting up of Sophie Cuckoo and Axo, who they were conversing through. It was like the chat function in an online game, I think.
Yeah.
I forget the name of it. But Axo's been going by Tarnished Mood Ring, right? He changes colors. Sophie is just _Sophie, so clearly Sophie. And I'm not sure if this is really a date or if they're just kind of like pals. Could go either way here.
Yeah. We'll see. The other thing I want to call out is it's clear that the writers didn't coordinate very well because we have a lot of scenes with Beast in the background, but there's no Jen Starkey. So you get this moment with Jen Starkey, and then he's like, piss off, I'm going to be in the front row of the Dazzler concert. She's just gone. And then
I guess Beast is just fun to draw, right?
Yeah.
He's kind of everywhere.
But I was like, man, that's cool,
we do see Quentin off in the corner at one of these panels.
Yeah.
Again, they don't interact, but they're there. Now, meanwhile, across town, Kitty gets the same plot. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Now you're bringing up Quentin, and you said he's not into Dazzler, right? He's at the front fucking row, and then you see in the very last panel, he's like rocking out.
Oh, yeah, he is. I hope that's just a continuity error, but I have to credit your theory has definite plausibility, unfortunately. Yes. So, meanwhile, still in the same segment across town, Kitty gets like the same plot setup as Banshee and Cyclops. Everybody likes this idea. One of these characters who's been around, seen a bunch of things, doesn't want to go to the party.
Yeah.
She's working at the restaurant, which is much, much cleaner than the last time we saw it. I'm saying that the health department came in and forced a change it to be made because this place was gross. Bobby, Iceman, tries to convince Kitty to go, but he fails to convince her. And why does he fail to convince her, Ruben?
I don't know.
Because he's not a leprechaun.
Oh, I see.
You have to be a leprechaun to make this work. We have learned this. It is written.
Yeah.
So we cut back the Chicago Vigil, and Emma gives a speech. These speeches never work on me. Maybe I'm just dead inside. It all feels like trite nonsense, very corny. Lines like, "My loves, we were children of Krakoa eons before any of us stepped foot on her soil."
Yeah.
And ends with Emma saying, "Krakoa lives."
Yeah. I was like,
is this Emma? I don't know.
It's definitely Emma. It doesn't seem like Emma. I've never thought of Emma as somebody that would be like,
right. That's what I mean. It's clearly drawn and meant to be Emma, but it doesn't sound like any conception of Emma Frost I have in my head.
I just thought, generally for the X line, where they're like, yeah, we're trying to get away from Krakoa. Like, are you sure you're trying to do that?
Once again, it's being pulled in two different directions. They want to get away from it, but they also want to celebrate it. Yeah. And it's uncomfortably up in the air here.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on. Next, segment 8, which is the Astonishing X-Men. Yes, the Infinity series gets their own segment.
Yep.
Written by Alex Pactadell, art by Declan Shalvey. And one thing I really like about this segment is it actually flows organically directly from the prior segment. Because we start off with Husk talking about being impressed by Emma's speech, which she just heard.
Yeah.
And it also has direct continuity with the book it comes from, right? From that bit last week where Banshee is here. He's way underdressed because, he had to go in a hurry because the leprechaun made him.
Yep.
And a third nice thing about this segment is it includes, and I have this in capital letters in my notes, actual plot events. Right? Not just romance. We're not holding hands and smooshing.
Sure. Yeah. No, this is where I was like, oh, something's actually happening here.
Yeah. It's going to matter. Yeah. It links to things we've seen before, and it's going to set things up for stuff to happen in the future. Almost like this is a comic book or something. Yeah. So Banshee, with his magical mutant hearing, he hears a voice singing, besides Dazzler. This voice is singing the Dublin folk tune, Molly Malone. Do you know this song, Ruben?
No, I don't.
We had this on a phonograph record of kid songs when I was a little kid. So I haven't thought of it for decades, but I've heard this 1,000 times. I'm not going to sing it for you. You're welcome. Banshee says that the singer is singing at 40,000 hertz. Now, normal human hearing range goes up to maybe 20,000 hertz. For most of us, significantly lower than that. So 40,000 hertz, way the hell up there. We're talking like dog range. Banshee recognizes the voice. He tracks down the source, and it's his daughter, Teresa, a.k.a. Siren. And this was great. I loved seeing her here because we know that she's been a prisoner at Greymalkin. We know that she's working for, kind of seemingly being brainwashed by warden/podcaster Corinna Ellis. And the folks working there, she says, have been allowed to come to this event, or sent really, like to test their loyalty.
Yeah.
We see her wearing these technological wrist, ankle, and neck devices, maybe monitoring her, maybe limiting her in some way. Banshee wants his daughter to come with him, but Siren says no. And then she says, and there's even quotation marks around this in the speech bubble, so she is quoting something here. She says, "I was born unworthy and am prone to evil. It was not my doing, but I cannot be saved." And with that, she just flies off. So really makes you want to see what's going on here. There's like religious-ish overtones, but I don't know, are we going to see Teresa more in Uncanny, where some of the Greymalkin prison stuff tends to happen? Are we going to see it in the Astonishing Infinity comic?
I would think it'd be astonishing because now you know that Banshee knows that his daughter's a Greymalkin, right? Like he didn't know exactly what had happened to her. So I would assume that he's going to try to get into that area.
Well, it says here, he's quoted saying, "Cyclops told us about the mansion, what they've done to you." Yeah. So he didn't know about it, but I'm sure that's different than seeing it, his daughter in flesh and blood right in front of her. Yeah. So yeah, some good stuff here.
If they go after Greymalkin, I would not believe this team could actually do anything but get captured.
Right. Plus, just from an outside of the universe point of view, they're not going to make major changes to how Greymalkin works in the Infinity comic.
Yeah.
So you could say, well, maybe they could steal Siren away in the Infinity comic, but big stuff is not going to happen here, for better and for worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad that the Infinity comic gets to be part of this event. That really makes me feel like the Infinity comic actually matters more than I thought about before we saw this. So well done for that.
Another scene with Beast without his girlfriend.
Beast here too?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, there he is. Beast is everywhere, man. Wow. And there's Dupe as well. So why not? Everybody loves drawing Dupe.
Where's Jen Starkey?
Yeah, he already dumped her a little bit ago.
She's wandering around saying, "Where's Beast?"
He's a little bit flighty, that guy. Okay, moving onwards. Segment 9. Now, this is officially the Dazzler segment. I mean, she's been in a bunch of these things as a singer, but here she is as a character. And this gets 6 whole pages. Written by Jason Liu, art by Sarah Pacelli. And yeah, this is written kind of just as badly as all the other previous Dazzler stuff.
Yeah.
Everyone talks like a not very bright child. I've seen people online arguing over whether the lyrics are bad or not on purpose. I don't think they're bad on purpose. I think they're just kind of bad.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Dazzler is on stage. She gets a transmission through her earphones from Domino that Sentinel dogs from Greymalkin are attacking.
Yes.
And I guess specifically attacking characters from the Dazzler book. Nobody else.
Correct, yeah.
And while damn near every mutant in the entire world is here, none of them step in to help out. Only characters from the Dazzler book.
Yeah, that was my biggest complaint about this. I was like, seriously, you have like 5 X-Men teams here, plus like Exodus and people like that.
Yeah.
We'd seen in the background, right?
Doesn't make any sense.
And they can't intervene, right? I mean, I get that they show up and teleport, but all the fighting is sort of backstage, so I was like, okay, I can buy it. But as soon as they get onto the stage, it seems like it takes way too long.
For sure. And
they even have the mutants in the audience is booing.
You'd think you'd say, hey, maybe we should call for help from one of the million powerful mutants right over there. So what happens?
Dazzler finds out that like people are coming for her, and she's like, I got to do one more song.
Yeah.
I was like, you're an idiot, Dazzler. Just go, right? Like if I'm there and the police are like raiding my concert, I'm like ending the set. I'm not finishing my one last song.
Well, that's because you're not dedicated to your craft like Dazzler is.
Okay.
So what happens is Strong Guy and Multiple Man, the characters from the Dazzler book, they get hit with Blightswill arrows. That was kind of interesting. Blightswill is the stuff that we saw, and I forget which of the Krakoan books, but that was used to kind of make mutant powers go away for a while.
There's that Bishop story.
We saw, it was in that Bishop story. It was also in some other places. It was kind of through there towards the end of Krakoa. We learned about Blightswill. It was one of the weapons being used by Orcus, etc.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of fun to see that pop up here. We see a Sentinel dog slip past Domino. That dog attacks Dazzler on stage in front of all the mutants. We get a hologram of Warden/podcaster Corinna Ellis, and the Warden says, hey, we've got a place prepared for you, specifically Dazzler, in Greymalkin prison. Greymalkin prison. Dazzler decides, well, we don't want any violence here. So for the good of all you people, I'm just going to go along to prison. Yeah. And so she and a few Greymalkin goons beam out together.
Yeah.
Now,
are these teleport suits that we see here? Have we seen those as like being affiliated with Greymalkin? I thought that was O&E originally, because they like snuck into the X Mansion in Alaska wearing those, but then they were stopped.
Yeah, I think you're thinking about this way harder than Jason Liu did. They just they need to be gone, so they teleport out. I think that's all. Yeah.
So my reaction to all this was like, is O&E now working with Greymalkin, or just they gave him these suits? But in any event, the one good thing that happens from this is Dazzler is now in prison where she belongs. So
crimes against humanity.
Yes,
for sure. But now, Ruben, if you were at a giant concert and on stage, the huge star gets kidnapped in front of everybody, don't you think like the evening would be over? Like no after parties kind of a situation?
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, no, the night goes on. Nobody really mentioned this ever again. So yeah, on the one hand, very poorly written segment. On the other hand, hey, at least something happens. It's not just a romance thing. We actually have an event.
Yeah.
I have no idea when or where or if this plot point is going to get picked up. Do you think Jason Liu is getting another one-shot or miniseries to do this? Is Dazzler going to...
In that scene where Dazzler's being teleported away by the criminals, you see the audience, right? They're throwing up like devil horns and like still rocking out. Does the audience even know that the concert is over?
Is it part of the show?
Yeah. I don't know.
Maybe this is like Gwar. Maybe this is like it's all part of the stage show.
Oh yeah, Dazzler is known for her theatrics.
Probably. But yeah, so curious to see where this gets picked up. But yeah, we do see that even someone as evil as Warden/podcaster Corinna Ellis, she does have some good qualities, such as that time she made Dazzler stop singing. Okay. Plunging onward some more. Segment number 10. This is all about Storm, and it's 5 pages long.
Yeah.
It's written by Marewa Ayodele, art by Luciano Vecchio, and in another segment that is completely separate from everything else going on in the rest of the issue. And in this segment, I'm not even entirely sure what order these panels and scenes happen in, because there's a lot of earlier, 2 hours ago, years ago, now. I haven't really put it all together. So Storm is flying above the Earth, like orbital distance above the Earth based on the curvature of the Earth we're seeing. She says to herself, I'm going to be a mother. And she doesn't mean like someday in the abstract, I'm going to be a mother. She seems to think that she is preggers right now. She lands, she buys a pregnancy test, she pees on the pregnancy test. Now that part takes place off panel, unless you bought the red band edition. That test tells her that she's in fact not pregnant. What is going on here? Why did she think that she was pregnant? Was this foreshadowed somewhere and I missed it? What is going on?
I think this is like 3 time periods, and it's kind of out of order, but not clearly spelled out. So I think Eternity shows her a picture of the future.
Right. We are going to see the future.
And she sees a child talking to her in the future. So she knows that in the future she has a child. And then it jumps a little further, but that's still like the current past, where she takes the test to see like, oh, am I pregnant already? And the answer is no. And then it jumps to the present.
I thought that the Eternity segment happened later. Like he saw that she was upset that she's not pregnant right now. And because he needs her to be not all morose so she can fight for him, Eternity shows her that future of the kid. Yeah. That's the order I got. But again, it's really unclear to me. Another thing that happens is, so after she finds out she's not pregnant, she dresses up like Janet Jackson and sits in an empty bathtub. That is what happens in this book. Doesn't she look like Janet Jackson?
Yes.
Like Rhythm Nation kind of time period.
That's pretty
military
funny.
Outfit. Now, just before we recorded, I read a little bit of the interview on Aped with Marewa Ayodele, the writer. He says that this moment is a reference to the anime Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Now, I have not yet seen that anime, which I know is always people say is like the top anime of all time. So if you've seen the anime and you think this is a good reference to that, let us know, because I can to me, she just likes Janet Jackson.
I can see it. It looks very similar.
Okay. Well, maybe I'm just missing it there.
I would not have just come up with that, and I have seen the anime.
It's a bit, he says, where someone's tears are hidden by the rain, and Storm can make things rain so she can make the rain hide her tears.
Yeah.
Something like that. Now, as I read it, Eternity wants Storm to snap out of this funk, and so Eternity grants this vision of the future child.
Is she hosting an after party, by the way? Sorry, I'm getting totally distracted.
I think it's happening at the same time. I think it's, again, like New Year's Rockin' Eve satellite event where there's just a section of this party happening at the Storm Sanctuary. Yeah. Maybe with the Krakoan Gates, people are moving back and forth. Like you want to hear Dazzler, go to Chicago. You don't want to hear Dazzler, go to Atlanta.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Makes me like Gateway even more because he ain't having the Dazzler. He's at the Storm event.
Yeah. Once again, all the characters are siloed, right? This is the Storm section. So all these Storm-linked characters are here at the Sanctuary.
Yeah.
So this kid, the kid who we see in the future is, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years old, something like that. Her name is Furaha. I don't know if that means something.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know who the father is, but the kid says that she inherited her father's black hair and fangs.
Yeah.
And also that she inherited
thought Blade.
Blade's a good guess. Also says both parents' mutant powers. So I think it has to be another mutant.
Interesting. Beast.
Now, we see her do like electric-y things with her hands. So we see her use her mother's kind of mutant power.
Yeah.
But I don't think we see anything from her father's mutant power. We just got black hair and fangs. And frankly, I don't think this is going to become like Storm canon. I don't think future writers are going to call back to this necessarily and say, oh, we got to make that prophecy happen.
Yeah.
Maybe, who knows? Maybe Ayodele has a plan to make something like this happen in the book. Maybe we'll see her romantically entangled with someone, a mutant with black hair and fangs.
Logan.
Does Logan have black hair?
Ish, yeah.
I always think brown, but I don't know. Maybe it doesn't matter. This vision does make Storm happy. She gives another speech to that satellite branch. And Ruben, do you think if you swapped the words of Storm's speech and Emma's speech, would anyone notice?
No.
I don't think so. Which is unfortunate because those are two very different characters and their speeches should reflect that, but it all feels very, very bland to me.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about this Storm segment before we hit the last one?
Nope.
Okay. Finally, segment 11. It's the X-Men again, this time for 6 pages, really a 4-page Scott and Jean bit, and then 2 more pages of actual plot events. Once again, written by Jed MacKay, art by Netho Diaz and Sean Parsons. So in these first 4 pages, Jean, the Phoenix, shows up at the factory in Alaska to make out with Cyclops. Doesn't make any mention of the whole crystal space ghost things you just learned about.
Yeah.
Right? Again,
got tired of holding the guy's hand. That's why.
Feels so siloed that she's already appeared in this issue. There should be some connection. I don't even know if Jed MacKay knows that there was a Phoenix section in this book.
I'm pretty sure these are all written independently.
I know these are different writers doing different things, but they should know what's going on, especially if it's in the same book. That's unfortunate.
Yeah.
She makes another interchangeable, bland speech to Scott about families, ideals, unity, etc. My favorite part here was the joke about Ben Liu wanting to make out with Scott. I thought, because they were joking about that before Jean shows up, so Scott makes the joke now and doesn't know Jean's there.
Yeah.
Kind of funny. But the real event in this bit comes on the last 2 pages.
Well, we see another scene with Beast and Jen Sarkey, so I guess they found each other again.
They did. And again, in the bits written by Jed MacKay, they're together. In the bits written by other people, they've never met. But here into these last 2 pages, it's 3K, it's the chairman from 3K, and he's kind of doing a play on Professor X's speech to Earth in House of X, which we've seen a couple plays on that. This is another one.
Yeah.
And he's addressing just the mutants, not the whole world, as far as we can tell, just the mutants, like through their cell phones. And his message is that 3K wants to bring about mutant supremacy. Seen that before. He wants basically the extinction of baseline humans. And he's got a schedule here, not a very pressing schedule, but he says he wants this to happen by the year 3000, hence 3K. So he's got some time.
Yeah.
We still don't know who the chairman is, but we know what 3K means. We know what 3K's goal is. So at least that's something.
Yeah.
And that's the book. So, boy, how to grade something like this, how to put a number on it. We don't usually talk price, but I did not find this to be $8 worth of story.
Well, the chairman, I want to say one last thing about the chairman.
Okay. Yeah,
in this
please.
picture in particular, he very much looks like Charles Xavier during the Krakoa era.
He sure does.
Wearing the full black uniform and, the Cerebro style helmet. I'm sure that's intentional, but it looks like total copy and paste.
And that was the error where I thought he was the maker.
Yeah.
Where I thought the big reveal at the beginning of Krakoa was, the guy under the Cerebro helmet is actually the evil Reed Richards.
Yeah.
So,
did you happen to read the New Avengers story by Sam Humphries?
I have not. Is this the recent New Avengers?
Yeah, it just came out last week.
No. Is there something relevant there?
Yeah. So basically there's a evil version of the Illuminati cloned, and they come out, and that's the villain team for that. I was just wondering, because there is an evil Charles Xavier, but he looks a little different. But I was just kind of wondering, is this gonna somehow
crossover with that? Probably not.
Well, not a crossover, but maybe that's who this character is. But I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. So a little bit more information about 3K, not a ton. Yes. Overall, to grade the thing, not 60 pages worth of story. A lot of these segments feel like why did they put a Phoenix segment here? It didn't add to this book. It just felt like we need to remind people Phoenix exists. The Storm segment didn't really need to be here. In fact, the only segments that have actual plot consequences are the ones from X-Men with 3K, the one from Astonishing X-Men with Siren, and the one from Dazzler, right? Something actually happened in the Dazzler bit, so got to give it that credit. So there's, maybe 10 pages worth of story here?
Yeah.
And again,
it's not worth the cover price, 100%. No. It's not good. But there were bits that made me smile. I had fun looking at the pictures of the large crowds and just wondering what people were doing.
Yeah, that was fun.
And the 3K piece at the end seems to move that story forward a little bit. It'll be kind of strange if they don't talk about that in the X-Men book, but I kind of feel like it'll be covered in a one-page recap. So there was no real reason to get this, just to see that.
Yeah, you don't need to buy this issue. For previous galas, you kind of needed to read that issue to know what the next big thing happening in the world was.
Yeah.
And here you don't. So we've talked about this already far too long already. I'm just going to cut to the chase and say I'm going to call this 5 out of 10.
Yeah.
You don't need it.
Yeah. We're in the same boat roughly. I said 5.5 in the Slack, so I'm just going to stick with that. Mostly because I had a lot of fun looking through those panels. The art is kind of enjoyable at times.
Yeah, the art is all quite good. I mean, we see the different styles. I didn't find it to be clashing. I thought, like, if I didn't think about, it's a new artist now, I wouldn't necessarily notice. It all looks really good.
Yeah.
Okay, that is it for Hellfire Vigil. Now on to X-Men number 19, Legacy number 319, Revelation. Written by Jed McKay. Hey, we were just talking about him. Pencils by Netho Diaz, inks by Sean Parsons, letters by Clayton Coles. Now, Ruben, I could tell this was going to be an unusual issue once I went past the cover and I landed on the credits page, because X-Men has been including a cast of characters on this page, sometimes listing as many as 14 characters here between the regular X-Men team and the 3K X-Men team. This issue lists 3 characters. Number 1 is Revelation, government name Doug Ramsey. Number 2 is Bay the Blood Moon, Doug's Iraqi wife. And number 3 is Warlock, Doug's techno-organic self-friend. And those really are the only characters who appear in this chapter other than some generic goon types. No Cyclops, no Beast, no Psylocke. We don't visit Alaska at all. That'll have to wait till next issue. This issue takes place entirely at Doug's own house, which we're only told is somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. Although it looks awful sunny there for the Pacific Northwest, doesn't it, Ruben?
Well, the trick is we get 3 months where it's actually like what they're showing here. But I laughed incredibly hard as soon as Doug was like, the sun. Because I've certainly had moments like that. Yeah,
he seems to have slept in a little bit and does not like the sun streaming in through his window, this foreign invader.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
You get used to the gloom out here.
Yeah, put you on the tourism board, maybe.
Yeah.
You get used to the gloom. Okay.
Yeah. But I can take a snapshot right now. It's like beautiful blue skies, lots of sun. So I had to draw my curtains.
That's just a latte talking. So we do get 2 pages of Doug dreaming and remembering his recent transformation to Revelation. The dialogue on these pages is directly taken from the issue number 4 of the Air Apocalypse miniseries. But this is the first time that we actually see Doug in this transformation process, which seems unpleasant, doesn't it?
Yes.
Very like Weapon X-ish. He's immersed in liquid. He's stripped down to being just skeleton and eyeballs. And then he's being remade into Revelation.
Yeah.
And I am glad that Doug's character design has kind of changed since the end of Air of Apocalypse. And when we saw him there, he was bald-headed and his skin was like white, like a mime kind of white.
Yeah.
Here he looks a lot more like good old buddy Doug, little more muscular and with some extra golden lines on his face, like he's the new 52 version of Flash.
Yeah.
What made me think
my only critique about the art is I think Netha should have drawn him a little less buff when he got into the vat. Because I was like, is he really that much buffer? Because they make a point to say
that's interesting.
You got really buff through this transformation, which I was like, okay, it's kind of cool to make him more formidable. But
yeah, just that one panel would have been, you want to see Steve Rogers before the super soldier serum looking kind of scrawny.
Yes. And I mean, that was the thing with Doug, is he always was pretty scrawny, right?
Right.
I can't tell you the difference between like the 4 shoulder muscle creases before when they called him scrawny, and then it would be the 5 or 6 when he's buff.
Yeah, I think those are the lats, the muscles on top of his shoulders up to his neck. Those look pretty buff already, for instance.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, good call. Interesting. But we do learn that Doug now is physically stronger and more resilient than before. And not just because he's kind of muscular. He is like apocalypse level resilient.
Yeah.
So like he gets literally thrown out a 2nd-story window by his wife for telling a bad joke. And he's perfectly okay with that. And
I forgot also the shtick between them, which is that Doug can't actually understand anything Bay says.
Right. That was the whole gimmick from the beginning, that she speaks in a psychic way that everyone can understand.
Yes.
He has these language powers to understand everybody, except he can't understand her.
Yeah. And so there's some weird stuff where he talks about she says the dream again, beloved, and then he says, yeah, bae, same as every night. I'm like, what?
It's a little
Kind of
confusing at
seems
first.
like he's following her, but
If you look closely, everything that he reacts to, she's also gesturing about.
Yeah.
So like she's pointing at
to
her head.
Oh, okay.
And clearly they've
helps.
had this discussion before, so he knows what she's referring to.
Yeah,
and later on, she's talking about glad that his hair grew back and says, oh, my hair? But she is twirling his hair in her finger at the time.
Yeah.
So it's all like gesture and not sign language exactly, but clearly he's going to be good at picking up on gestures because
that is more like language. Yeah. Okay.
And later on, when they get into more like philosophical or conceptual things, Warlock is kind of translating between them.
Right.
So I thought that was well done. It fueled me at first, and I went back and checked it out again, and I think it works. The other upgrade he gets is that he used to just be able to understand any language. Now we're told that, quote, he speaks with the authority of Apocalypse himself and commands obedience from all minds who can listen. So it reminds me of almost like a vampire power in some vampire movies and role-playing games where they can like command minds, or almost like the Force, right? These aren't the droids you're looking for. That kind
and
of
I like this because what we know of Apocalypse is he's upgraded people's powers all the time, right? That's kind of his shtick. Mm-hmm. So, and it's like, what would be the upgraded, more badass version of like understanding everyone?
Yeah, it's
like
at least
making everybody
linked to his
understand
power.
You or do what you want, right?
There have been prior times where Marvel writers have tried to make Doug into more of a badass, like, oh, he can read body language really well, so that's good in a fight.
Yeah.
I think this one actually works better than that because it is directly tied to language.
Yep.
I don't need Doug to be a badass, but if you're going to make him a badass, this way works.
Except now he's the Purple Man, right? The Purple Man, but also he can understand everyone perfectly.
Oh, yeah. So what is Jessica Jones going to think about this? I didn't make that Purple Man connection, but it is pretty similar. I guess the Purple Man technically is like a pheromone-based power, I think.
Okay.
Although I think they've gone back and forth on exactly how it works. Yeah. But yeah, he is. Interesting connection. So Doug and company talk about what they should do, what their plan should be. And I do like that Doug here is acting very much like Doug Ramsey, right? He's considering the ethical issues about being the Purple Man, actually, he compares himself to Professor X and how Professor X would always cross one ethical boundary after another in what he thought was the greater good. And Doug does not want to go down that path.
Yeah.
He even quotes himself from way back in House of X telling Charles, we need to be good or we're nothing, which, boy, was that foreshadowing.
I will say, though, every time I see people talking shit on Xavier, I'm like, you guys would all be dead if he hadn't done what he did, right?
Well, that's Charles.
Rise
right?
of the Powers of X.
Also, we already know what would happen if Charles had died before the X-Men, right? Age of Apocalypse showed us that. So Charles is super consequential, but he's also just such a jerk both ways. That is the beauty of the Professor X character. But Doug here, he wants to, and maybe Doug's going to end up going down that same route. Maybe having this level of power, this level of, trying to make the world a better place is always going to backfire.
Yeah.
That could certainly work out.
Enigma would have taken them out, right? Like there was no way they were beating Enigma without a crazy like stasis out of time, like no place, whatever, and all the shit that he pulled.
All that stuff. But maybe that's what the Age of Revelation is going to be, is Doug trying to do things right and everything going horribly wrong. That seems like a very X-Men kind of a plot to happen.
Yeah, that'd be good. And then he kind of realizes maybe Xavier's not to blame.
Well, maybe a little bit of empathy at least. Could be. Yeah. We'll have to wait and see. He also says here, Ruben, he says, I used to hack computers. Now I can hack people, but we need to
hack the planet!
To hack the planet. And Bay and Warlock do not get that reference.
Yeah.
He even calls it out as a movie reference. Did you immediately get that movie reference?
Or Hackers, right?
Hackers, yes. The classic 1995 film Hackers, starring a young Angelina Jolie.
Yes.
Very much the kind of film that Doug would be familiar with. I know the sliding timeline makes that complicated because if Doug is in his 20s now, he wouldn't have been born probably when that movie came out, but we'll go with it.
I'm fine with it. Who knows when it came out in the MCU?
I always get it mixed up in my head with the movie Sneakers, Robert Redford, in a kind of a hacking kind of movie, but this one is Hackers, and there is, young idealistic hacker types think they can make the world a better place through using their abilities. And their slogan is,
Hack the planet!
There's a lot of hacking by just like getting a keyboard and banging on the keys really hard.
Typing very fast. Yes. I'm in. A lot of that kind of talk. But it was 1995, so this was when those cliches were really getting going.
Yeah.
Although I guess really they got going in War Games, which was probably 10 years earlier. So maybe we won't do suggested reading. We'll do suggested viewing, watch War Games and Sneakers and Hackers, and get yourself a little hacking movie marathon. So after all that talk, time for some action. We see a team of military goons attacking Doug's house and his family. These are members of the ONE, Office of National Emergency, but they're a more radical faction within one who call themselves Zero, Z-E-R-O. We don't know what that acronym is for. Maybe Jed McKay hasn't figured it out yet, but all we're told is that 0 is the number of good mutants they think exist. 0.
Yeah, I was okay with that. It's like another number related thing, right? Instead of one. I did kind of laugh when it's all spelled out with the asterisks. I'm like, do you think when he's saying this, he's like 0 asterisk, E asterisk, R asterisk, O?
Good question.
Doug's like, why are you doing the asterisks, dude?
I do wonder, do you think there's an even more radical faction within 0
Negative
that have
one.
negative 1 with asterisks that I don't even know what the acronym would be? You could go on forever, right?
Yeah.
That's what I'm waiting to see. Now, this goon squad, not very effective, or at least they've chosen a target that they are not prepared for.
Correct, yeah.
And they know that Doug's the heir of Apocalypse. How exactly they know how public that information is, I don't know. It wasn't super secret. Maybe a bunch of mutants knew that Apocalypse was looking for an heir. So sure, one could have that information. I'm fine with that. So a flashbang EMP puts Warlock out of the fight, but not before Warlock at least warns everybody they're coming. It's okay that Warlock's out of the fight because Bay the Blood Moon is an absolute beast. She's an Iraqi mutant, and she acts like an Iraqi mutant. She jumps out of the house, starts beating soldiers to death barehanded. She doesn't like subdue them, knock them out, tie them up. No. They attacked her family.
Yeah.
They're dead.
That's not what you do in Iraqo.
For sure. Now, one guy gets into the house to confront Doug. Doug uses his new command powers to order the goon to put the gun to his own head. And it's left ambiguous. Is Doug really going to have the guy actually kill himself? Or is Doug going to just show him what I could have done and then let him go?
Yeah.
We don't get to find out because Bay comes back in, uses her Doom Note power to turn the goon into goop. Just literally nothing left of this guy except for 1 foot still inside his boot.
Yeah.
Really gross. But again, that is what Bay would do when she sees her husband seemingly in danger.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought it was good. The only thing I didn't like about this scene is because I forgot what her power was in this. I'm like, it kind of looks like she's running like hypersonic speed. And then you see Doug like closing his eyes as like blood splattering all over him. I could have used a panel that showed her like opening her mouth, right? Because I had to look it up. I was like, what is her power set again? And then I was like, oh yeah, that's right. When she can talk and like basically she's got like a Black Bolt type thing where she can
very much Black Bolt, yeah.
You know,
so we see a panel of Doug's face with a sound effect, boom, and that'll be the Doom Note, but I had to go back and look at her wiki page to remind myself how that worked too. So the cabin's burning down. Doug reboots Warlock. The three of them head out down the yellow brick road, not to Oz, but north towards Alaska. And Doug's final line is, if we're going to change the world, we could use some X-Men. Pretty good issue. Effectively establishes who Doug is now, how he's changed, how he's also stayed the same, points him towards a meetup with the rest of the cast of this book. It's still going to take me a little bit to come to terms with the idea of Doug as a badass, but this is a good start. It's an okay start.
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what happens when Doug and company arrive in Alaska. Like, what is Cyclops going to think of the new Doug? Will he see him as good old Doug Ramsey? Will he see him as, oh, you're an agent of Apocalypse?
Yeah.
Could go either way. Judging by the solicits, it looks like the next 2 issues of X-Men are back to just our usual cast doing their usual things. And in issue number 22, Doug and family are going to arrive in Alaska. So yeah, like this issue. Go ahead.
I kind of hope they show up in a few more issues elsewhere. If it's going to be like, if this is going to be a multi-series crossover, I kind of need to see, these guys out and about beforehand. But definitely I like this one.
Oh, you mean to set up the Age of Revelation?
Yeah. I think it'd be helpful to see Doug being consistently a badass at least like one more time somewhere else.
It would. I mean, if he's going through Canada, could something happen with Wolverine?
Yeah,
probably
cool.
not. I mean, theoretically it could, but it seems like Wolverine's story doesn't feel like it has space for Doug in it.
Yeah.
We'll see. So, really nice issue, good character work, effective exposition without being overly talky. We get some exposition through action where the actual violence and action happening on panel teach us about the characters. Always good stuff. I want to see more of this kind of thing. I'm going to give X-Men number 19. I'm going to go up to an 8.5 out of 10. I thought it was one of the better issues I've read in a while. How about you, Ruben?
It was definitely a good issue. I'll just go straight 8, but everything about it I enjoyed. The art was cool. The scenes were cool. It's fun to see like the new power set. It's like believable how it was upgraded. And, the Doug and Bay relationship continuing always. I don't know. I kind of get a kick out of like Iraqi culture being maintained.
Yes, and nobody called attention to it, right? It wasn't like, oh, no, Bay, don't kill anybody off. We have to, right. He knows who his wife is. She does what she does. And maybe he's kind of come around to her way of thinking. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. And even when they do the little conversation about like philosophical, like what should we be doing? And, we talk about what the Iraqi would do. What does survival of the fittest mean to them? What does it mean to,
right?
What's that race that Warlock is part of?
Oh, the Technarchs.
Technarchs, yeah, thank you. What it would mean for them, right? Like kill everything that's not you or assimilate the things that are useful. And he's going to try to figure out what it means to him. I thought it was cool.
I agree. I am curious what contact he still has with Apocalypse, right? Are they emailing or is Doug totally off on his own?
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious to see stuff about that. But yeah, lots of questions, but the kind of questions that make me want to read more, not questions like, oh, why didn't they answer them already? Yeah. This is the start of an interesting arc, I think.
I will say he needs to change his bloody shirt and pants, unless that's all he's wearing.
I mean, he just walked out of the burning house, right?
Yeah. It's clear. Well, Bay had time to get on her outfit. She had time to put on her Iraqi uniform.
That's true. Okay.
But Doug's just like, I'm all good. I'm good with what I got here.
I do like his Krakoa was for lovers t-shirt. We've seen that before. Yeah. It's a pretty good t-shirt. I'm sure they sell that. I'm sure they sold that at the conventions and stuff.
Probably, yeah.
Okay, moving on to... you know what I didn't play that I should have played? Every time we were talking about how Doug is a badass now.
Yes, teach me
because
Doug.
I say this specifically. This is a drop that Jim's been using. So, Ruben, just tell me that Doug is a badass.
Doug's a badass.
Oh. There we go. Okay. Now we can really move on to Hellverine number 8, Hell Breaks Loose. Written by Benjamin Percy, art by Raphael Ienco, colors by Brian Valenza, letters by Travis Lanham. So when we left off, we were all shocked.
I am shocked. Well, not that shocked.
When we found out that the evil-looking Severith was in fact not a good guy. In fact, he had been in charge of Hell's own weapons labs. Akihiro was unable to act on this information as Severith had paralyzed him by handing him a magical, evil walking cane, and then sealed Akihiro inside a black pyramid bearing the inscription, "Here lies Dakin." So at least he's not going to be too hard to find. In this issue, we see that once the pyramid is complete and Severith has buggered off, the cane in Akihiro's hand transforms to a giant, like a sandworm creature. Sandworm not in like the Dune sense, but like the bait we used to cut up to use to catch fluke and flounder off the New Jersey coast. Makes for some effectively gross visuals as the worm wraps around Akihiro, starts to swallow him head first, but it's probably a strategic mistake because the cane, as just a cane, had locked Akihiro in place. He couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
But a worm, he can fight a worm. So Akihiro kicks the worm's ass, if worms have asses. Anyway, he defeats the worm, chops it up into teeny tiny pieces, busts out of the pyramid. Also, last issue when Severith took his hood down to show off his demon horns, that also unblocked Akihiro's infernal sense and let him read Severith's mind. So now Akihiro knows the full history of Severith and the Hell Hulk and what Severith is up to now. Get a big backstory flashback bit here. Severith was working for Mephisto in Hell, breeding new demonic weapons and servants. One of these turns out to be Hell Hulk. I was waiting to see an actual Hulk connection, right? Gamma, Bruce Banner, the one below all.
Yeah.
But no. He's just a very big, strong demon who kind of looks like a Red Hulk.
Yeah.
And Hell Hulk, he's super strong, but he's not the most loyal servant. He just wants to smash shit up. That's all he needs to do. What he is, he's a badass, Ruben. Hell Hulk is bad to the bone.
Okay.
I'm probably done with that. We'll have to wait and see. So Hell Hulk attacks Mephisto himself. Mephisto calls on the demon Bagra Ghul to defend him. Bagra Ghul's the demon now bound with Akihiro, but this is before that. Bagra Ghul is very loyal to Mephisto, and we learned the timing here, which is kind of surprising. I thought Hell Hulk would be like some ancient evil newly loosed upon the world. But no, Hell Hulk was created by Severith not very long ago. He was created after the original late 2023 Weapons of Omega crossover that introduced Bagra Ghul, but before the Hellverine Limited series in the spring of 2024. So very tight time bit there. Bagra Ghul defeats the Hell Hulk in Hell, tears Hell Hulk's body to pieces, which is not really shown on panel. I think it would have been clearer if we could actually see that, tearing into bits and hiding in various places on Earth here.
Yeah, I had a hard time understanding.
I think that must be what happened here, right? I don't see any other way to interpret this.
And it was also a little weaker for me to say like, oh, Bagra Ghul's able to do that when it seems like Akihiro's had no problem dealing with Bagra Ghul or like containing it.
Yeah, I think one of Hell Hulk's big powers is like inciting mindless rage in people around him.
Yeah.
And I think that just doesn't work on Bagra Ghul. So
I guess that makes sense.
That's how Bagra Ghul. But again, we would have loved to see how this fight played out, but we don't get to see that.
Yeah.
While all of this is happening, also Severith is pissed off at Mephisto for destroying his best weapon ever. And I guess the implication is, again, not really shown, is that Severith decides to go to Earth and make it his business to reassemble Hell Hulk. Not working for Mephisto on this. I think Severith is freelancing. He just wants his toy again.
Yeah.
So while all of this is happening, Severith re-enters the labs of Project Hellfire underneath the Pentagon. And yes, he does finish reassembling Hell Hulk. Now, Ruben, what did we say was you should never do with Hell Hulk?
Yeah, don't put the head back on the body.
But that's not what Severith says. He says,
And I'll form the head.
Yes, he Voltrons it all back together, puts on the head. Hell Hulk busts out of the restraints, starts smashing shit up, because that's what Hell Hulk does.
Yeah.
He even kills off the last two members of that undead reanimated military squadron from the miniseries.
Yeah. Made me kind of sad to see that.
I was sad to see that. I love that little bit of continuity, but R.I.P. to Corporal Jamie Doden and Lieutenant Colonel Leon Townsend. Barely knew ye. Dr. Spivey, the human woman nominally in charge of the team, she is trapped under some trashed equipment, but she's still alive. And after Severith and Hell Hulk leave, Akihiro comes, digs her out of the rubble, and then he climbs onto his demonic Harley-Davidson motorbike to chase after the bad guys. But Severith and Hell Hulk are already out causing mayhem. Severith, I guess, can control Hell Hulk because he loads him into the back of this demonic Knight Rider semi-truck.
Yeah, he's just like, hey, come this way. And I guess they recognize each other, but...
Yeah, that I think needs some explanation. Why is Hell Hulk not still just destroying
everything? Yeah.
Right. Give Severith some magical item that he made to control Hell. Some explanation.
Yeah.
So they're on this truck. This is the truck that has the giant 6-foot tall skull on the front.
It made me laugh. I did like that art.
Again, very silly, very over the top. Not the kind of thing that's going to go unnoticed, right? You're trying to be, trying to be subtle here. No. Big, evil, demonic truck belching smoke and flame with the skull on the front. And of course, everybody they're passing by is thrown into a violent rage. So Akihiro has having trouble catching up to the truck because he keeps stopping to save people, throwing themselves out of skyscrapers and stuff. So that's the end of this issue. Confrontation with Hell Hulk is going to have to come next issue. So yeah, this issue was okay. High on the goofy scale, which is what we like. I thought the backstory could have been compressed a little bit. I wanted to see a little bit more about, Severith and Hell Hulk and how Bagra Ghul defeated Hell Hulk. Need a little more of that, but the Raphael Ienco, he leans into the demonic violent stuff, plays it totally straight, doesn't wink at all on the goofiness, which is the right way to do it. Not a ton of plot progression. I think I'm going to give this like a 7.3 out of 10. Light, fun reading. If you like this kind of thing, if you've enjoyed this series, you're going to like this issue as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I was happy with it, but I had a really hard time understanding the backstory. I think I was asking you to lay it out for us. Makes a little more sense when you spelled it out, but there's just a lot of stuff that happens off panel. And for something that's supposed to be like very light and easy to understand, I was like, okay, this is not as easy as it could be. So I'm just going to give it a 6.5, but it's still positive. If you enjoyed this book, right, it's only been getting better, right, in the sense of like doing what I wanted it to do, which was like the goofiness.
Yeah, this second arc definitely better for me than the first one.
Yeah, so I was happy with it, but this was not my favorite one. I think the next issue will probably be better.
I hope so. Now, this arc will end in issue 10, and we haven't seen solicits past that. I think it's possible that this whole book ends in issue 10. I think Ben Percy's going on to do Punisher stuff, so maybe this is getting canceled to kind of give him room in his schedule to do Punisher.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. That's why they killed off the other Project Hellfire guys.
That's what I'm wondering. And maybe that's also why they couldn't advance this plot so much, because they know they have to finish this story in issue 10. We knew this was never going to go for like a 50-issue run. It's not that kind of a book. But, I'd take another arc of this. I'd take another 5 issues to kind of see Hellverine, Akihiro do something else.
I kind of would like to see somebody else get a chance at it. Just
another
to see a different
writer?
take. Yeah, just a different take. Like, I've really enjoyed what Ben Percy's done with it, but I want to see like what else we could be having.
Do you know who could write a fun Hellverine but will never get put on the book? Donny Cates.
Because of his Cosmic Ghost Rider.
I think just his he likes to lean into extreme characters and pushing the envelope. And I know he's not really in good graces with the big two these days for reasons I don't really know anything about, but I think the idea of thinking about Donny Cates' Hellverine could be fun.
You get Scott Snyder on it. I mean, I know that Marvel will never get Scott Snyder to come over, but in terms of like the vein and the style, I just think of like Absolute Batman being like so over the top. You just get like a ridiculous Hellverine.
Yeah, I don't know. Hellverine's not going to be carrying a series all the time, but he could certainly pop up in other books. He could be for an arc of Wolverine crossover or, any kind of
I hope so. I hope there's some version of him in the future. That's what I'm hoping for.
For sure. We'll have to see how this wraps up, if it really does wrap up in issue 10 or whenever it does. But, Ruben, those were all the books that we had to talk about this week. Next week we have Uncanny number 17, which is a one-shot we're told will introduce a character named Mutina, who is a character within a horror movie in this universe. And she's a mutant serial killer in the movie, but only in the movie. We'll have to wait and see. That seems kind of fun. And other than Uncanny 17, not a whole lot going on in the X-World next week. I mean, Laura Kinney Wolverine is coming out. We dropped that. Magic is coming out. We dropped that. But the Power Fantasy number 10 comes out next week, which is Kieran Gillen's not technically an X book, but kind of an X book for Image. So I propose, Ruben, that you and I, next time after Uncanny and after doing the Infinity comic, we do a little catch up on the Power Fantasy. That sound like fun to you?
Outrageous. Absolutely not.
What is Jim going to cancel us? What are they going to do? He doesn't want to read these books.
No, yeah. Everyone knows I love that series, so 100% on board with that proposal.
Okay, so there you go, folks. You have your recommended viewing of War Games, Sneakers, and Hackers. And now your recommended reading is to get caught up on the Power Fantasy, issues 1 through 9, with issue 10 coming out next week. And do that before Ruben and I spoil the hell out of it for all of you, because there's some pretty good twists and turns you'll want to read before you hear about them.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've been wanting to reread that for a while. So, and I think I read the first few a couple times, but not.
It's one of those series where I know I like it because every time one comes out, it makes me want to reread everything up to that point again.
Yeah.
Not because I've forgotten it and it's
just to see what was revealed or like
get myself back into that universe, back into that mindset. It's really good stuff. Do check it out. And that's all I have to say, Ruben. What do you have to add before we sign off for the week?
Read more X-Men comics.
Ruben.
Get ready, everyone, and you just might survive. Ruben and Jason are Things are getting weird in here. Ruben hopes another sword book gets announced this year. It's
Ruben?
the Weird Dose of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed not to blow. Except your mind. It's
And
the
I'll
Weird
form the head.
Dose of X, the X-Men comic show. It's the Weird Dose of X, guaranteed not to blow. Except your mind.
Fight the planet!